Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-hosts, Jeff Mack, Newmark Knight Frank, and Shannon Lane, Newmark Knight Frank, Drew Hanlon, Peter Snelling, Merrill Lynch, and Mark Hildenberger, Exude. And we'd like to, Jeffrey, would you give us a rundown on who we have on the air today, please?
Sure, Herb. We have a great show. Eileen Heisman, President and CEO, National Philanthropic Trust. We have Larry Bendesky, Managing Shareholder, Saltz Mongeluzzi Bendesky. Fred Fox, Co-founder and CEO of Planalytics, and Clelland Green, President of Benepath.
Let's get to know our first guest, who is Eileen Heisman, President and CEO of National Philanthropic Trust. Eileen, what is National Philanthropic Trust? What are you guys doing?
We're a national public charity headquartered right outside of Philadelphia. We manage donor-advised funds and other giving vehicles.
Give us an idea of how many dollars you've raised and what's special about your organization.
We've been around for about 25 years. We've raised $17.5 billion, and we have about 10.3 assets under management right now.
Mm-hmm. And where are you from originally?
I grew up in Horsham.
How many brothers and sisters?
An older brother who's a chess master and is 4 years older.
When your brother, so you're a young girl, your brother's 4 years older, and he's a chess master. And what's a chess master have to do with what you do for a living?
Dan is able to master chess because he can think about scenario planning really fast and what if scenarios and how the chess pieces would move. And I have a similar talent, but not at chess. I actually could never remember how the pieces move, but I can do it in my work really quickly. And I didn't even realize it was a gift, but as I got into my job more, I realized it was a great tool to have.
What's a gift?
Being able to play out scenarios in your head really fast, what if scenarios, so I can play them out simultaneously so fast. It helps me make decisions.
Which is the reason you're able to juggle a lot of stuff and build this rather substantial organization that's raised $17.5 billion. Jeffrey?
Eileen, you've created an incredible company. And in the green room, we were talking about your parents, your dad, and the advice he gave you about doing something that you love, and then your mom introducing you to something that you love. Can you tell us that brief story?
So my dad actually was an optometrist, and he hated his job because his mother made him become a doctor. So he just told me early on, find something that you really like and do that and you'll succeed. And my mother had an enormous social conscience. And so one of the early memories I have, and especially in this moment in time, she took me to help distribute the Salk vaccine in 1960 in the high school cafeteria. And she set the whole thing up and ran it. And I helped her put the cups together and put the sugar cubes in them. They put the drops of the Salk vaccine in the sugar cubes. And I did that for a couple of days with her when I was about 6 years old.
How'd that make you feel? I mean, didn't you want to go back and play with your friends again?
No, I loved it. I would have done it another day or two. I felt really responsible. I followed directions well as a little kid, and I just felt like giving back and preventing this really important disease from getting spread to more people.
So you remember putting the stuff into the sugar cubes so that people could take it, and you really, what's that have to do with building National Philanthropic Trust to raise $17.5 billion?
You know, I always liked the idea of making the world a better place. I worked in politics for about 5 years and realized that wasn't as close as I wanted to be. And then I got involved in charitable fundraising and realized that I was good at raising charitable gifts. And so this idea that I could be part of a much grander, geometrically growing tool to help people grow their philanthropy was just really exciting from the first moment.
Drew?
Eileen, did you have a lot of friends growing up?
A ton of friends. On Facebook I have friends still from kindergarten, even before kindergarten, and there were still friends. I still see them.
What does that tell us about you, that you had a lot of friends growing up and you still are close with them today?
I'm loyal. I'm really loyal to them. I like them. The thing that I liked about them when I was 4, I still like about them now when I see them, that kind of moment of connection with somebody. And I stay connected, but not overly, I don't get into their lives in intimate ways, but
how does that
Shannon?
Eileen, it's very clear that giving back has always been important to you. Going back to that experience when you were 6, what did you learn that you still carry with you today?
how to scale. We actually created a system about just doing this thing when we were young. And I remember thinking, there's a way we could do this faster. Like I remember my mother too. So I loved scaling actually. And I loved the idea of doing something on a grand way as opposed to just doing things one at a time.
Good. Mark?
Did you play any sports or activities when you were a kid?
I studied dance for 26 years, and I taught dance, and I did it 3 times a week, and it was really a very important part of how I thought about my life. And it was, even now, I really, really like to dance, and I miss it, but I do a lot of yoga now.
Earlier, Eileen, you mentioned that there's this moment. You kept on talking about there's this moment which has to do with chemistry or intuition. What was that all about? And what's that have to do with who you are nowadays?
You know, when you're faced with a decision, turn right, turn left, go straight as a CEO, you get a lot of information and you have to make a decision. And I take a lot of facts in. I like reading data. I'm not afraid of numbers, but there's a part of me that intuits things. Intuition's a complicated thing, but I think I've been intuiting things for a long time. And when I've ignored that voice in my head, I've often come to regret it. So I really embrace it.
Peter?
Eileen, you described yourself in the green room as scrappy. What happened in your youth that maybe gave you that tendency to be a fighter?
I have a funny story. When my brother and I were really young, I think I was 3, the neighbor, my mother was watching out the window, a neighbor hit my brother, a little boy hit my brother, and my brother went up crying to my mother, what should I do? And she looked out the window and I was hitting the kid, and he was 4 years older than I was. And she said, I guess I'll never have to worry about Eileen. So at age 3, when somebody hit my 4-year-old brother who was 4 years older, I was hitting him back and my brother was worried about what to do.
Drew, what else are you thinking there? So Eileen, you mentioned that, Eileen, you mentioned earlier that Dad had this thing about gadgets. What was that all about? And what's that have to do with who you are nowadays?
He used to sit me on the couch and open Popular Mechanics, and they had this part inside the magazine that had inventions. And he would walk me through every invention, their application, why they created them, who would use them, how it made life easier for the user. And I think that I have done that in my job. We've made donor advised funds easier to use for people. So I just love the idea of new ways to do things. I always have.
So this organization you created, National Philanthropic Trust, really is an invention. You figured out, it's like your father really enjoyed inventions. You've figured out how to raise funds. What's special about this? Give me that invention again.
We white label donor advised funds for large financial firms. So we private label for JP Morgan, UBS. We work with Wells Fargo, Merrill Lynch, and Bank of America. So we work with some of the largest financial firms in the country, and they push out a product called a donor advised fund, and it's like NPT with a different cellophane wrapper around us.
Cool. Also, you mentioned earlier that I think I know the name Heisman from sports. What's your connection to that?
My grandfather's name was Charles Heisman, and his cousin was John Heisman, the coach, after whom the trophy is named. So John Heisman coached at Penn and Georgia Tech, responsible for the highest scoring college game.
All right. So if we were doing a good interview, what else are we missing on you?
I got a good one, Herb. Eileen, you've had a long-time love affair with a very special window cleaner. What contribution has Marty made to your career? Your husband, Marty.
So supportive of all my successes. He's so amazing. He celebrates them all the time, and it's so wonderful. It's not my first marriage, and my previous experience wasn't so warm and fuzzy. So to have somebody not be intimidated by me, I am kind of scrappy, and I have a feistiness about me, and he just embraces it and loves it and makes me feel like I can keep going.
What else are we missing about you if we were doing a good interview?
I have something.
Yeah.
Back in your youth, again, I think you told us a story about watching your mom go through a traumatic experience at the hospital she worked at.
My mother was an inpatient psychiatric nurse for 50 years, and Jewish women didn't do that too much, so that made her very unusual. And when I was 12, she was beaten up by a patient at the Norristown State Hospital and had a severe concussion and was out of the house for almost 2 years.
What did you learn from that?
I learned how to cook, and I learned how to do everything at home, and I learned how to do things for myself and be really independent.
What's that have to do with
end up doing?
Mm-hmm. Well, what's that have to do with who you are nowadays, Eileen?
I'm still really independent, and I do things for myself, and I figure out solutions.
What's the website address of this organization, National Philanthropic Trust?
nptrust.org. N as in Nancy, P as in Paul, trust.org.
We've been speaking with Eileen Heisman, President and CEO of National Philanthropic Trust here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. And we will be back in a moment right after this break. Don't go away. You now can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Yes, recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your advisors. Yes, this radio and online social media exposure is free and quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, and we'd like to introduce Larry Bendesky, managing shareholder of Saltz, Mongeluzzi, and Bendesky. Larry, what is Saltz, Mongeluzzi, and Bendesky, and what makes you guys special with a national reputation?
We're trial lawyers. We represent people who have been catastrophically injured in industrial and construction accidents, and we've settled or tried cases earning about $2 billion.
Wow. I also understand you've done something special for widows. What's that all about?
Well, we've represented a lot of widows whose husbands are killed in construction accidents, many of whom have kids, and we've been able to put away money. So over 100 of those kids have been able to go to college.
Mm-hmm. Okie dokie, Drew.
Larry, you mentioned you played baseball as a youth. What was your position on the team?
I played shortstop. I was the leadoff hitter.
And what is shortstop and leadoff hitter? What's that tell us about you? What's that personality trait?
Well, on shortstop and defense kind of controls the defense, sets the tempo, decides who's going to get fly balls or pop-ups. And the leadoff hitter sets the table. You know, I'm the person who set the table for everybody else and frankly scored the runs.
And what did being a baseball player teach you about leadership?
I think it taught that you have to fail sometimes. You know, in baseball, even the best players fail 60 or 70% of the time. And in business, it's not always going to be great. You have to understand that maybe you're not going to get a client or circumstances out of your control are going to work against you. And you have to keep grinding and you have to keep working.
Mm-hmm. Jeffrey?
To be successful.
So, Larry, understanding people's struggles, tell us about your dad. We were talking in the green room about his difficulty with school and then some of his early career.
Yeah, my dad was a high school dropout. He left school in 9th grade, and he never had any control in his life. He first started to lay floors. He hurt his back, and then started to sell. And he was passed over for jobs multiple times by people with an education.
How did that influence your career, Larry?
He was unemployed several times during his life, and I saw that. And I decided I wanted to run my own business. I wanted to be in control of my destiny. I didn't want to let other people and outside factors influence my success.
How young were you when you decided you wanted to be an attorney? Who said what to you?
I knew at an early age. I was probably about 12 years old, and I would beat my dad pretty regularly in arguments, and he would just always say, you know, you should be a lawyer.
Oh, okie dokie.
It fits with my skill set.
Peter?
Larry, you mentioned that you had kind of an aha moment when working with Justice Jim Mallinson that guided you. What happened?
Judge Mallinson is a great man. I think it's important to have mentors in your life. And he guided me and helped me find the right path in the law. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And he was very influential in helping.
Shannon?
Larry, you've been with the same firm for 30 years now. What does that tell us about you?
Well, I'm loyal. I care deeply about people. I care about the people, not only my clients, but the people I work with. And it's not just me that's loyal. I think we breed loyalty within our firm, and we've had people that have been with us literally for 30 years.
Mm-hmm. And in the green room, you also mentioned honor. How young were you when you started realizing the importance of loyalty and honor?
I think at a very young age. It's not just in business. It's in sports. It's in life in general. You have to have loyalty. You have to have honor. You have to treat people with respect. And I think that as a lawyer, that is vitally important.
Mark?
You talked a lot about your dad growing up. Where was mom during all this?
My mom didn't have a lot of control. My dad was angry. He was volatile a lot. My mom stood by and watched. I think it's important in life to seize control, to decide what you want to do and to go for it and not sit on the sidelines.
So what's the best part? What's the best part of your gig? What do you enjoy the most? As a lawyer,
I like helping people. I represent individuals. And in what we do, we're able to influence their lives. We see them and represent them at the worst point of
when you meet a potential client, do you get this intuitive sense? Do you get this empathetic feel for what's really going on there and help them really understand what you can do for them and how you can help them?
Yeah, that is absolutely true. We see them at the worst point of their lives. We see widows whose husbands have been killed. We see construction workers who are now quadriplegics. We can't do anything for them medically, but we can help them financially in their lives to make sure that their kids go to school, that there's a roof over their head, that there's food on their table.
So this is not something that you just did it. I mean, this thing that happened with Dad, where he really didn't have any control. He lost his jobs. There was probably issues in the family regarding finances. What you're trying to prevent are other families suffering from what your family suffered through. Is that possible?
That's more than possible. It's absolutely right, Herb. I have a deep empathy for the people that are sitting, at my conference table, and I want to make sure that they know that I'm going to do my very best to take care of them.
Yeah, because you felt the pain as a child. You don't want them feeling it in their families.
Exactly right.
Who's got the next question for Larry?
Larry, some attorneys are great administrators, but you're a fighter. What makes you a fighter? Why are you a fighter versus an administrator?
It isn't easy in what we do. Nobody's going to say, oh, I feel badly for your client. Here's the money to take care of them. You have to fight. We have to try a lot of cases. We have to be ready to go to bat for them. Just like I played in baseball, just like I've done all my life, you have to actually do the work in order to get it done.
Drew, Jeff?
Larry, over your many-year career, are there some clients that you stay in touch with over the years on holidays and just check in with them and they check in with you?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a great satisfaction.
Wait a minute. Why are you smiling right now when Jeff asked you that question?
Because I feel connection. I feel warmth towards my clients. And yes, to answer that, Jeff, it's to be able to make sure that somebody's able to go to college, to hear from a client telling us how he or she is doing, how their family is doing, is a tremendous reward from what we do.
How do you feel when you hear from someone who's kind of gotten their life back on track, and as a result of you helping them to get it that way?
There isn't a more rewarding feeling in life than to work hard, to take care of somebody, and to be successful in doing it.
So we realize you're running this very successful law firm. You've managed to bring in better than $2 billion for your clients. $2 billion. Wow. And I'm wondering, how do you go about giving back to the communities?
I am on a number of boards, nonprofits. I think it's important for anybody that's achieved any level of success in their life to understand that they've been fortunate to do so. And I think it's important to give back to those that aren't as fortunate.
Mm-hmm. Which charities are you involved with?
Community Legal Services is the main one, where we help to take care of people that don't have the money to get legal representation.
Mm-hmm. So you're really all about defense. You're really all about helping somebody that's been hurt, because that's what you're doing in your professional life. It's also what you're doing in terms of giving back to the community. And it sounds like you're giving back to the community in terms of dollars, but it also sounds as you're giving back to the community in terms of your own personal time. Do you encourage the other partners and the other members of the firm to give of their time as well?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we are in a very good place, and we have to recognize that we're in a good place and that we help people that aren't in as good a place.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. How large or how small is your firm?
We have 30 lawyers, 80 employees.
And it's really a pretty tight-knit team. It's not, you don't have a lot of turnover there. What's the benefit to your clients of this tight-knit team?
Well, I think everybody is, if you've been doing it for a long time, you know what you're doing.
There you go.
Experienced. You have connections with judges, with lawyers on the other side.
Website address. What's your website address?
smbb.com.
SMBB. We've been speaking with Larry Bendesky, managing shareholder Saltz Mongeluzzi and Bendesky here on Executive Leaders Radio. We'll be back in a moment, right after this break. Back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, and we'd like to introduce Fred Fox, co-founder and CEO of an organization known as Planalytics. What is Planalytics? What are you guys doing, Fred?
So Planalytics is the global leader in demand analytics, addressing the financial impact of weather on the global retail supply chain.
Oh boy, it sounds pretty sophisticated. Whose idea was this business?
It was my idea that evolved over many years.
How many years you been doing this?
Over 20.
How young were you when you got a sense that business was an evolvement over a long period of time? How young were you, and how did you get a sense that business wasn't something that happened in a moment, rather it evolves over a long period of time? Where'd you get that from?
I think just from the experience of starting out in weather and migrating into data analytics, it really evolved over a multi-year period.
Mm-hmm. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I am the middle out of 5.
Mm-hmm. Jeffrey?
Fred, tell us about your mom. What was she like, and how did she influence your business career?
Well, my mother is very focused on how to treat people. She and her mother grew up in the hotel industry. So she was always very focused on treat everybody the same, treat everyone with the respect. She was always big on that.
Mm-hmm. And Drew?
Fred, you were quite the hustler as a youth. What kind of things were you doing at a young age to earn money?
I was doing everything, whether it was selling seeds in the spring, greeting cards, in the fall. I was always doing something.
Were you selling these things door to door?
Door to door in our neighborhood as far as I could.
Wow, that's what did that teach you about business, going door to door?
Well, it teaches you, it teaches you rejection, and it teaches you how to convince people to buy things that they probably didn't need.
And who would be back at home asking you how things went when you were on the road?
Well, my mother would get into the specifics of who bought what types of cars. My dad would ask how much money I made that day.
Mm-hmm. All right, Peter?
Hey, Fred, early in your career with this business, in your 20s, you met the man that you eventually bought the business from. What influence did he have on you, and why?
So Irving P. Crick, I really fell into taking over his company. Here I was, a kid in my mid-20s, or mid to late 20s, that knew nothing about running a company, let alone a weather company. And he was just happy to have me do it. He was Eisenhower's meteorologist during World War II, was a larger-than-life figure.
And he coached you along the way, I presume?
Mm-hmm. He coached me to think big, to think about global events, global things, partially to do with weather, but partially to do with his life as part of that whole war generation and being a senior leader.
Interesting.
Ted, looking at your bio, you sit on several nonprofit boards. Why is giving back important to you, and how young were you when you first started seeing it show up?
Well, when I started to do a lot more work in Philly, I migrated back from the West Coast. I started to get involved in a lot of organizations, trying to do what I could to help improve things, mainly with my time, because that's what I always saw my parents doing.
And in the green room, you mentioned sports having an influence. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I played sports for most of my life. I was not what we would say a great athlete, but I always did 3 sports a year going through high school, and even in college played the sports as much as I could.
Mm-hmm. Mark?
Fred, we talked about how you, like me, were really attracted to selling, but you have a stutter. Has that hindered you in any way?
Yes, I've been attracted to selling. I like selling, and yet I'm a stutterer too. So in sort of a funny way, I have to stutter my way through a sale and have learned how to do it with a smile. And what I found is that as long as it doesn't bother me, it doesn't bother other people.
Mm-hmm. Fred, you're very humble. And can you give us a quick sense of what your father was able to accomplish?
Well, my father, I would say, probably lived life to the fullest. He was an entrepreneur in his own industry, the building industry. Went through many different building phases. Was involved in a lot of nonprofits, especially Temple University, which was his true love, even though he was not a Temple grad.
I was chairman of the board at Temple University when I started the Entrepreneurial Center, if I remember.
Yeah, he chaired the board from 1983 to 2000, but he had been on the board at that point for about 15 years. He joined the board in 1967.
He really turned around the declining university, and I watched it happen. And it was interesting because his reputation was that of a builder. You know, he built residential, he built commercial, he was a developer. But here he was turning around a university. What was that common skill that he brought to the party? And what did you pick up from him that you bring to work every day?
You know, he grew up on the streets of Philly during the 30s and 40s, and that gave him a certain way of looking at people. And he had the ability to bring people together, even ones he did not agree with. He had the ability to talk to them. I remember he and John Street would have lunch once a year, and he would always come back and talk about it. And it was a battle between both of them as who was a tougher guy and who grew up on meaner streets. And they didn't agree on much, but they both enjoyed having that lunch. And it taught me that just because you don't agree with someone doesn't mean you can't really like them and talk to them.
Wow. What's that have to do with how you've built this world leader in Planalytics in terms of weather?
I think it taught me that you keep plowing through every day, that you get up in the morning and you figure out what can I do to knock down the obstacles in front of me. It taught me too how to deal with people. You deal with them as they come, not how you want them to be, and you find the good within them. That you can both work with as well as appreciate.
Mm-hmm. Jeffrey, what else you thinking?
Fred, not too long ago, we had dinner with the wives, and we were talking about our kids and your 3 children. What have you learned from your children?
What do you always learn from your kids? patience. You hope you don't go gray over the process. You again learn how you got to do the best that you can, even though sometimes the best is not good enough with.
Mm-hmm. Well, how's that helped you? How have your kids and what you've learned from your kids helped you grow Planalytics?
And being a father.
Well, parenthood teaches you patience. And of course, you always have more patience with the youngest kid versus the oldest.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you have that first kid, you just don't know what you're doing, and you don't have the patience. I found in my youngest daughter, who is 7 years old, I have a lot more patience than I ever had with
mm-hmm.
son.
Mm-hmm. How's that helped you build the business?
Well, I've had both a stubbornness and a patience to continue with the business through its many evolutions. We started out in weather data. We're now a global big data analytics company using cloud-based systems, artificial intelligence, and that's what makes it exciting too, because every 5 years it's a brand new business.
Are there more opportunities in the future, or were there more opportunities yesterday in this business, Fred?
Oh, there's tons more opportunities. The opportunities we have today are exponential versus what we had maybe 5-10 years ago.
What's the website address for Planalytics?
Planalytics.com, Planalytics.com.
We've been speaking with Mr. Fred Fox, co-founder and CEO of an organization known as Planalytics here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. That's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. And we will be back in a moment right after this break. Stick around. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, Executive Leaders Radio. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable. Yes, this radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors for free exposure. Back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, and we'd like to introduce Clelland Green, who's the president of Benepath. Clelland, what do you do at Benepath?
Well, I run the company.
Mm-hmm. And what is Benepath? What are you guys doing?
Well, we've connected 3 million consumers with insurance agents across the country to get their health insurance, their Medicare supplements, Medicare Advantage plans, commercial insurance, and group health insurance.
And how'd you get a job with this company?
I started the company.
All right. Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from England.
Uh-huh. And did you tell us you grew up in Willow Grove?
I did.
All right. And Willow Grove's a suburb of Philadelphia. And how many brothers and sisters?
I've got one brother and one sister.
And where are you in the pecking order?
I'm the oldest.
And tell us a little bit about what kind of stuff were you up to 8 to 14?
Gosh, I did everything. I was in scouts. I did birding. I did rock collecting. I worked, I did multiple jobs. I had paper routes.
You were pretty active as a kid, Jeffrey.
Yeah. I played sports, and we played, we just played all the time, basketball, football, soccer, whatever it could be, wiffle ball in the street Jeffrey. Hockey, everything.
In the green room, we were talking about your mom and what she was up to in the Willow Grove community. What did you learn from your mom, Clelland?
she was a hard worker. She was organized. She was an effective communicator. She had a gift of gab like nobody else. She was the first female elected official in Montgomery County.
What do you take to work from her every day? What do you hear her telling you when you're running Benepath?
Oh gosh, stay on top of things. Communicate with everybody really well and care.
Wow. Drew.
Oh, and you mentioned you played pretty organized soccer. What was your role on the team?
I was a defender when I was a kid.
And what's that tell us about you?
Well, a defender, I wasn't the best athlete, and anyone who's listening who played with me knows that. But I was smart, so I had to use my brain to get myself in the right position to deal with the people who might have been better athletes.
What would your teammates tell us about you?
That I was slow. But I was aggressive. I mean, my teammates would tell you I was very aggressive.
What lessons did you learn playing soccer that you can bring with you to work every day?
Well, the lessons I learned playing soccer, I really dropped soccer and picked up lacrosse in college. Just picked up my stick for the first time there. And, teamwork, execution, practice, and focus.
Mm-hmm. Shannon?
Clelland, outside of your immediate family, who was somebody that you looked up to as a kid?
Well, when I was a kid, this is a tough one to actually admit because a lot of people have feelings about him, but Jimmy Carter.
Tell us more about why him.
Well, I think that he probably was the best ex-president that I've seen in my lifetime. He's done more for the community, more for the world. And, he's got elements of his personality that are very admirable. His empathy, his compassion, and his sincerity are something that I think that no matter where you stand politically, you can respect.
Mm-hmm. Peter?
Well, how young were you when you started making money, and what were you doing?
Probably I was like 10, and paper routes was the first thing I did, and that evolved into shoveling walks in lawns.
What's that taught you about business, and how do you apply it to what you're doing now?
Grit and determination. When I picked up that first paper route there, it was the worst one because I was a low man in the totem pole. So it was in a hilly area and there weren't a lot of customers, and I had to go door to door and get customers and get that route up so that it was worth my time.
So is that influencing how you're growing your business now?
Grit and determination are huge elements of everything that I've been about in business my entire career, and absolutely right now.
So hustle's a big factor.
Hustle and staying with it and, blowing through brick walls.
Mm-hmm. Mark?
Oh, we heard about your mom, but where's your dad fit into all this?
So my dad was incredibly smart, man. He raised the three of us and put himself through college in 4 years and got his bachelor's and master's degree at the University of Florida in electrical engineering. So no slouch major, and did it in 4 years, raising three kids. And we moved up here. He worked on, submarine chasers in the Cold War, and he'd bring home these gadgets, before there were personal computers, and my brother and I would hack them. And, there's this word game on one with a little LED screen, and we would, put bad words into it and think it was very funny. But it taught us a lot about logic and if-thens and that type of thing at, 12.
Mm-hmm. What's that have to do with who you are nowadays?
Well, a big part of my company is technology. We're an online company, and I designed the database. I designed a lot of the logic and a lot of the applications that we do. So having that technology side along with the more liberal arts side of my life has been very, very useful.
So it sounds to me like you've got this engineering thing going on, and you've also got, which is dad, and the innovation thing, you've also got this gift of gab and sales, which is mom. You're the combination of the two, it sounds like.
Yeah, I am. It's funny. I'm really good at sales. I'm great at business development, and I've got that hyper focus, and I can get into analytical problems, flow charts, database design, the user experience in our websites. All of those things are elements that I owe a lot to my background.
What if we were doing a good interview? What else should we be covering about you? What don't we know about you?
What don't you know about me?
Yeah.
Gosh, that I was also a pretty darn good chess player when I was a boy. And that's a big part of, what I do as well.
What do you mean?
So, I always looked at chess as it was the strategy side of it and where I wanted to get to on the board, and having that type of mind where I'm looking at progressing across the board, taking control of the center of the board, building my strength, weakening my opponent, and eventually checkmate. I just think that that's been a huge part of helping me in my life.
So you're all about strategy. It sounds to me like you're all about strategy. Oh, by the way, you just happen to understand technology, and by the way, you happen to understand sales. But you're all about designing the strategy, the competitive advantage.
Vision is everything. Being able to sit out and look at what's going to happen 3 years from now is so critically important when you're trying to make decisions today.
Drew, what else are you thinking?
Well, it sounds like your mom was really a visionary, and I'm just curious, like the impact of watching your mom be a pioneer and a visionary, what that impact was.
Well, it's interesting. One of the earlier guests mentioned, the impact of being a woman in business, and one of the things it led me to do was it led me to really respect women and look to not just attract but promote women in every organization I've been involved with. She was very inspiring that she was working and she was getting stuff done, and she was very effective at what she did.
When you're faced with like a tough decision at the office, what do you hear your mom telling you?
Think it all the way through.
Shannon, what are you thinking? Last question.
So you started this company in 2008. Tell us more about where you got that courage from.
That's a great question. Sometimes you take a look at things and you say, what's the best option for me right now? I'm going to go try and get a job and work for somebody else, or I'm going to go build something. And I'm a builder at the end of the day. Steve Goodman, bless his soul, was a great mentor to me. And, he told me one day that I was going to be a serial entrepreneur when I was in my first role of that. And he was right. I like creating and I like building, and I made that decision. And then I just took a look at the market opportunities and chose this one and went for it.
Mm-hmm. Clelland, what's the best part of your day? Why?
Playing tennis.
Really?
And being with my people at the office, we've got a great team. I wouldn't be sitting here. We wouldn't be having the success we have without that team. And it's just so enjoyable being with them at the office and now on Google Hangouts or Zoom or whatever we're using.
What's the website address for Benepath?
What's that? The web address is benepath.net for agents, and it's easy.insure, easy 2 letters, .insure for consumers and businesses.
Excellent. We've been speaking with Clelland Green, president of Benepath, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Jeff, can you give us a rundown on who we've had on the air today, please?
What a great show. We started with Eileen Heisman, president and CEO of National Philanthropic Trust, Larry Bendesky, managing shareholder of the law firm Saltz Mongeluzzi Bendesky, Fred Fox, co-founder and CEO of Planalytics, and Clelland Green, president of Benepath.
I would like to thank my co-hosts, including Mr. Jeff Mack and Shannon Lane from Newmark Knight Frank, Drew Hanlon, Peter Snelling, Merrill Lynch, and Mark Hildenberger from Exude for giving me a hand structuring the questions, help providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. I'd like to thank our audience for listening. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a radio show. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com to learn more about our executive leaders. It's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, we thank you for listening today. Please tune in again next week and have a nice day. Bye-bye.